Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. Hey everybody, we're back. It's Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. I am thrilled because I get to talk to two of my favorite people, the comic book power couple. There they are. It's
one of us anyway.
One of us right now.
All right, John's introducing. Hang on a second, John.
Sure.
Let me go grab my email. I'll forward you the link. Louise didn't get the link, so she's.
Oh, Louise, I'm sorry. All right.
So let me. I got to bail out for a second. And
you got it.
I will forward it to her. I got it right here.
Okay, man, because I could do it as well, but no, that's fine.
And,
either way.
Let's see, forward.
Yeah. All right, here we go. I'll say hello and say yes. Walt and Louise are going to be here in just a second. Walter Simonson, Louise Simonson, and have we lost picture? No, I don't know. Everything seems to be working fine. Looks like we're doing all right. Everybody's saying hello. That's cool.
There I am.
There we go.
Did you get it, Sugar? Okay. This is forward with my name on the.
Sorry about that, Louise. My fault.
Sometimes it takes a little while for the thing to show up.
That's all right. Good to see you,
Hopefully
man. Hey, thanks for coming on earlier and talking to Dave Gibbons.
It was great to see. I just drifted by. There he was, and one of my favorite people. So I was delighted to be able to say hi.
Absolutely, man. This is great. We're really excited for you and Louise being part of Baltimore Comic-Con. That's coming up next weekend. And you're going to help us launch Friday. Honestly, Walter, this is going to be great. Dean Haspiel was your assistant back in 1985. And it was, and I want to get this right, it was you, Dennis Cowan, Howard Chaykin, and Bill Sienkiewicz.
I think he helped all of us. Probably, I think he was hired on originally, Dean could tell you better, as Howard's assistant.
Okay.
And there ended up being two studios side by side at... 239 West 29th Street. Is that correct? I think that might be right. Anyway, we had a studio we started called Upstart Associates up on the 8th floor. Initially, it was me, Howard, Val Merrick, and Jim Starlin. And Val decided to move back to Ohio fairly early on. He was going to leave in New York, heading back. And when he left, Jim Sherman took his spot. We basically had 1,000 square feet in a big square room, and we divided it into quarters. So we had one guy in each quarter. And so when he came in the door, I was right in front. I came in late because I was working on Alien. So I couldn't go to the studio. So by the time I got there, all the other corners were taken. So I got the corner in front of the door. So I was in the front of the door. Jim was you came in to the right, Howard to the right back, and initially, Starlin was on the left back, and then there she is. And then Jim moved upstate after maybe about a year or so, might have a little more. I don't, but in a bit. And Frank Miller moved in. And then it was the four of us for several years.
Wow.
And eventually Frank moved out. And Gary Holgren, who was one of the underground cartoonists, and at that time, by then, was a really accomplished airbrush artist doing a lot of commercial work. And so he moved in, took over Frank's spot. Howard moved out to the West Coast. And then it was just the three of us for a time. And ultimately, I left as well, and Gary moved up to New England. So Upstart ceased to exist. But we were around, let's see, we started in 79 or thereabouts and ran until, well, I was in it until 86 or so.
Wow.
So 7 years.
Yeah.
We were there with kind of rotating membership slightly, but it was fun. It was a great place to work.
Was it very
next door to us was initially a stained glass artist,
cool.
Benoit Gilsot, which I thought was a great name. I think it was Belgian, and he did very beautiful stained glass for a lot of major clients. He was a major stained glass artist. His son was his agent, and when I don't know if he retired or simply moved to another shop. I'm not sure, but he left the space, and a graphic artist, took over. Don't remember his name. It's that Steve Hobicki guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get out of here, dude. So the graphic artist, I've forgotten his name. Howard might remember. And ultimately, he sublet some of his space, to Bill Sienkiewicz and Michael Davis and Dennis Cowan.
Wow.
I forgot if anyone else was there or not, but the three of them were there for sure. And so for a while, it was a batch of us in these two adjacent offices, lofts, really. And Dean kind of helped. Howard, I think, was hired on by Howard originally, and then kind of spread it around some to help out as he was needed.
Very cool. I was going to ask, is it very man cavey? And Louise, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
It was just, big space, lots of books, lots of reference.
Oh, sure.
Pre-internet, no computers. But it was fun. It was a nice place to work. And at one time, Frank was working on Daredevil. Howard was doing American Flag, the first comic, and I was doing Thor. So a lot of good stuff was coming out of that studio for a while.
That's great. And Louise, we're really excited. Welcome, first of all. It's great to see you.
Hi, I'm glad I'm finally here.
I apologize. I thought I sent the link to both of you. I did it so early this morning, and I just, Ken.
It may have been on, way back in the emails, and I just didn't see it.
No problem.
While Wheezy's talking for a second, I'm going to see if I can go over to I didn't think about doing this. I should have gone on my Facebook page and put a link up to this. Just
sure.
let people know we were doing.
And actually, it's did I send you a YouTube thing? Because it's
or maybe in the email. I don't know.
Because the link is really just for us to broadcast, so we don't want a bunch of people coming in. Hey.
Oh well, that's probably. I can just tell people I'm on. We're on.
Tell Facebook. Tell your
I'll
Facebook,
go do that,
sure.
and I'll be right back. I don't know. I'm on the other internet. I don't know if you'll be able to see me or not, but I'll be looking at my Safari.
All right, all right.
You should probably turn off your.
I'll turn her off.
Audio.
No, I got it.
Second. Anyway,
there we go. See, he's backstage now. Now it's just you and I, which is great because honestly, Louise, and I told you on the phone. Honestly, I've wanted to have you on for so long, and I appreciate you coming on with Walter and Christy, and you are going to have a great conversation. I know at Baltimore Comic-Con Saturday. That's going to be great.
I love Christy. She's the best.
So while I have you and Solo, honestly, I told you I read that great book about Jim Warren. And right now I'm forgetting who wrote it. The gentleman that passed away, great guy.
Skelly.
Bill
Skelly. Thank you.
Yes, Bill. Yes, is it Skelly? Okay, I had
said correct. Yes.
Man, I'll tell you, I got to talk to him when he wrote his Otto Binder book as well, and my God, what a loss! Because truly a tremendous comic fan and comic historian.
That's right.
But it was great getting your perspective on working at Warren, and especially those creepy and eerie years. And I grew up reading that magazine, and I've loved hearing you, tell your stories about working there and stuff. So tell everybody what it was like being at creepy and working for an impresario or an impresario wannabe like Jim Warren. Tell me about that whole experience.
Well, okay, I came in. It was my first comic book job, and I came into Warren. I applied for a job because one of my friends, Michelle Brand, worked there.
Okay.
And she said, I was working in advertising promotion for a magazine publisher. And she said, well, there's this opening at my company. It pays better than your opening. And you could do the job because it does pay subs and mechanicals and stuff like that. I said, okay, sure. And I applied and I got the job, which was, very cool.
Yeah.
I got a raise. Whoa, so it was 80s money, so it wasn't a whole lot of money, but it was enough to pay my rent anyway, so that's good. And so I worked I was hired in production, which is the people who do pay stubs and mechanicals and lettering corrections and all of that stuff. It turned out that my skills at pay stubs and mechanicals and all that stuff were, I think, less than they should have been. But it also turned out that I was pretty enthusiastic and thought I could do pretty much anything. So that when they said, well, gosh, we really need somebody who can do a letters page, and I say, I can do that. We need somebody to write. I can write ad copy. I can do this. I can do that. So finally, they got me out of production. I'm sure there were plenty of people in production who were delighted by that, and put me over in editorial. They created an assistant editor position for me.
Wow.
In which I ended up, doing all of that stuff that I said I could do, which it turned out I could do, pay stubs and mechanicals and a little bit. And then, writing letters pages and writing ad copy and coordinating people's schedules. It turned out I was actually pretty good at that. So I guess I worked as an assistant editor for, gosh, it must have been 2 or 3 years. Walter, how long was I working as an assistant editor at Marvel? Right.
I'm back. Let's see, 74.
I never know how long I did anything.
You were there. You went to work for them in 74, and you were promoted, I think, to senior editor. I think in 76. I think you were the senior editor for 4 years there.
Okay,
Wow.
There you go. Okay, it took me 2 years to get my megalomaniacal attitude about I want to run this thing. Bill Dubay, who was the editor, decided he wanted to quit. He didn't want to come into the office anymore. It was quite a long trip from Connecticut where he lived.
Okay.
And he decided he wanted to work out of his office, at home. He created a magazine called 1984.
Yes.
That he would do on his own.
Sure.
And Warren was looking around outside of the company for somebody to take over as editor. And I said, well, I went into his office and I said, well, I want to edit these books. And Warren tells me, he said, girls can't edit horror comics. Isn't that cute? Yeah, right. And I said, well, look, here's what I'm going to do. I will do it for 6 months. I'll get the books on schedule. I will work for my regular pay with no assistant. And he said, well, it's not stupid, right? I mean, that was really not, how could you refuse an offer like that?
Sure.
So it turned out that, yes, I could do all of that stuff. I didn't get the books on schedule. And, I was made the senior editor, and then I was made a vice president, which is sort of cool. But, I was a big, medium-sized fish in a really little fishbowl. But it was sweet of him anyway, I think
part of the deal with that for Wheezy was that she said she would do all this stuff, and she did it for 6 months. Then she wanted the title, and she wanted the salary.
Yeah, well, sure.
Which she got.
Yeah.
That's awesome. No, and the garbage that you had to go through, telling Will out, Louise, and it doesn't surprise me. And man, it was always great. And I'm sure when we had conventions, unfortunately, when Mark Evanier would have his panels and have a bunch of you on the same panel, and I remember good old Len Wein talking about you trying to wrangle him for a job over at Erie or Creepy, and certainly the page rate there wasn't as good as it was at a DC or a Marvel.
No.
And Len had been established at that point, and you kind of had to sweeten the deal by waiting till the last minute to tell him maybe who some of the collaborators he could possibly work with, and that usually helped sweeten the deal, as I understood it.
I don't know about that, but I did get some really good people, I have to say. Warren eventually hired Carmen Infantino, he had been the publisher at DC and had been let go. Yep. And Warren loved the idea of having the ex-publisher of DC working for him at his company. But it turned out that, and so he told me, well, just give him as much work as he can do. And it turned out that Carmine could do a lot of work. So we had these, 8 and 10 page stories that I would get in, and, he would whip them out. And then I would have to try to make them, since it was an anthology book and the different stories were supposed to look different, I would have to convince different people with different styles to ink the different stories to make them look like it wasn't just a Carmine Infantino book.
Sure.
And it turned out, luckily for me, there were a lot of people who admired Carmine and wanted to ink one of his stories. So I was able to get a lot of really good American artists to come in and ink one and sometimes even 2 issues short stories that I did. So it turned out really well. That was fun. I had a lot of leeway and was able to run experiments on my readers, which also was fun. I had been getting letters from several people. I get more than several probably, about, these stories are just, they're predictable, and we can always tell the end of the story by the second page. And I said, all right, here's the deal, people. And I was allowed to do this, right? I said, we're going to have a contest. And I will print, there'll be 6 or 7 stories in the issue, 8 pagers, and I'm going to leave off the last page of each story. And the person who guesses the end of all of the stories wins. We had, out of all of our readers, we had 1 person who guessed the end of all this. I mean, I honestly thought that, within a week we would have 5 answers. And I said the first person, right? But we only had 1 person out of all the readership who guessed it. And, we gave them a prize, whatever the prize was. I don't even remember. And
let me jump in for a second. I will say that what Weezy also did, out of the 5 stories or whatever there were in the magazine, I think there were 2 in which the answers were really easy.
Oh yeah, I did 2. I did 2 easy ones. 1 really, really easy. 1 pretty easy. Medium up to difficulty, and the last one was the most difficult to figure out. And one person got all of them successfully, and that was the end of the letters that said we all always know how the stories are going to end, for a while at least. I got to do a series of sports issues.
Really?
Which I had this theory that that comic books and sports would have a lot of the same demographics. So if I did sports horror stories, well then, it would be a win. And that one actually didn't pan out. I think it actually dipped in sales for the sports issues. So obviously the horror comic readers weren't really sports fanatics. But yeah, I did a lot of stuff that was really fun. I had some really great people I was working with. With Bill Mahaly he was working mostly putting together famous monsters of Filmland. And I had Ken McQuaid, who was my art director and had done some really nice, innovative stuff. He was really helpful in giving us excellent covers, and the sales did go up. The sales went up when theoretically when I became the editor, but I think it had a lot to do with Kim being such a good art director too. Probably more, actually.
Well, and playing with sports, that reminds me of the old DC title, that Strange Sports Stories that would pop up every now and then back in the day. I remember that, absolutely.
I wonder how those sold. Curious. Anyway.
Well, now that it also is celebrating its 1000th issue along with Action.
Back in those days, they probably sold better than most comics sell now.
Oh, you're right about that. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, you're right.
Really, guys, honestly, you've seen so many ups and downs of the business, and truly, and this has been kind of my general question of everybody. Sadly, since COVID hit, nobody knows what the director market's really going to look like when we get out of the other side. And you guys went through the great experimental graphic novels that you guys did, also Star Slammers and the like in that period, that great 80s period of the black and whites, mm-hmm. the boom and the bust of the 90s. Mm-hmm. And so here we are again in a big sea change moment. And any prognostication or any thoughts as the business continues to change?
I didn't have any thoughts back then. I don't have any thoughts about it now. I just kind of take my cards and play them as I get them.
I think this is an opportunity for small publishers. I think that there will be a lot more online comics sold,
Yes.
over the internet. I think we're seeing a lot of that right now.
Yeah.
The last royalty statement we got from, I think it was DC, had a giant list of material of ours that had been, put online for people to view online. So I think that makes that's going to make a big difference. I think people are more accustomed now to just getting online and doing all sorts of stuff. But I also think that since the big two, like Marvel and DC, are pulling back a bit, I think that, comic book companies like, I don't know, Boom and Ahoy and, oh gosh, there's so many of them, are going to expand. I know I just did a 5-issue miniseries that just turned into a graphic novel, Storm King, which is, another small publisher that, there are a lot of people who are willing to step in and take part of the market. And I think that's going to be interesting because a lot of the smaller publishers are doing things that are not superhero comics. They're doing, I don't know, space opera and cowboys and, kids comics and fantasy and all sorts of, ordinary real life stories. It's going to be a very interesting and I think a more diverse marketplace.
That's awesome. And I agree with you. Both genres and, as you said, too, a look towards digital as well. So, man, this is great. We are getting questions for both of you. And a Facebook user says, Walt is the best. He invited me to lunch with him and Sean McKeever at Bob Evans years ago across from Colossal Con. Never forget his kindness. Oh, that's sweet.
I like Colossal Con. I was out in Cleveland. That was fun. It was mostly anime. I was there once or twice on my own, and once some years later with Wheezy, and it was mostly an anime convention. Fabulous cosplay. I think that was the first place when Wheezy was with me. We were kind of out in the hallway at the table. They weren't back in the main room. It was fine, but it was great because a young woman came by who was a fan of ours, who was also a big fan of anime. And so all these great costumes would go by us, walking by, and we would have no idea who they were. And she'd say, "Oh, this is so and so. This is this thing. This is that thing." And at one point, I didn't grab a photograph. I don't know if my camera had a phone. That was a long time ago. A group of young women went by, late teenagers, early 20s, I think. And I couldn't tell for sure. And they were all dressed up as the Avengers. So it was a completely distaff Avengers group, including Thor. I've forgotten the rest of them. And I hadn't seen much of that stuff. I mean, there's a lot of comics now about switching genders for a lot of characters.
Yeah.
But I hadn't seen much of that at the time, or maybe any of it. And I thought it was fantastic. They were great costumes. And there were a lot of really good costumes out there. So we had a nice time.
That's awesome.
It was fun. I'm glad he had lunch.
Now, Louise, you can confirm this question, and many of us know the answer, but we want to know the story about this. Is that you on the cover of House of Secrets '92? Did you pose for Bernie Wrightson?
I think from here on in, you should say no from here on in.
Yes, I posed for it. It was, back in the day, it was, Bernie was, he wasn't even yet a big deal. He was very talented though. He and Jeff Jones and Mike Kaluta, I think, Alan Weiss might have been part of that group, who they had taken it into their heads to work from photographs, from reference for some, I don't know why, but they did. And, I happened to be a girl they knew. So they got me to pose for the House of Secrets story. I got to be on the cover. And then if you look inside of it, which I don't know if people ever do that, there's Bernie and me and Kaluta are all in there as characters. Like I'm the girl, and I think Michael is the villain.
Yeah, I think
Bernie's the hero, if I remember it right. So you can see a whole batch of pictures. I think Michael has had some of those photographs that were, or at least, I don't know if they were the actual ones that were drawn from, or just, other discarded photos. But he has a batch of them from that particular photo session.
He's put a couple of them up on Facebook from time to time.
Yeah,
that's
great. A lot of fun.
That's outstanding. So, did you guys meet? Like, Walt, were you pitching stories for Creepy and Eerie, or did you guys only meet when you got to Marvel? How did the two of you get together?
We got together through mutual friends. Archie Goodwin and his wife, Ann Murphy.
Oh, that's great.
When I came in New York in the beginning of August of 1972, and was lucky enough to get work pretty quickly. Short stories, little small things. And I ended up doing several jobs for Archie. I mean, when I say small, I mean small. I did a 3-page Alamo job. A friend of mine named Don Crar wrote. I did a couple of battle albums, which are like pin-up, 1-page deals, and a few other things, a little science fiction-y stuff. A friend of mine, Jerry Boudreau, wrote. And then after about 6 months, I've been working for Archie mostly. He asked me if I wanted to draw a new backup feature he had in mind. He had taken over Detective Comics as the editor. And so it was going to be a Batman story in the front. And he wanted to run something in the back that was new. He wanted to run something that would be, if not antithetical to Batman, it would be sort of opposed to it on the spectrum. So you would have the two things in different ways. So where Batman was a city guy with Gotham City, this guy would be wandering around the world. Where Batman was a dark, brooding costume, gray and blue, this guy would be bright. Where Batman was largely an empty hand fighter, this guy would be a weapons master. And that was really the birth of Manhunter. That's where the strip Manhunter came from. Yeah. I think DC also wanted to keep the trademark, the name alive.
Sure.
Why Manhunter comes around every so often as a character, different versions. And I began doing that. That strip ran for about a year. It made my career because before I began, I was 6 months into my career when that strip started. So it was really early. And when I started, nobody really knew who I was. I mean, my friends did. I met Bernie, I met Howard Chaykin, I met Kaluta, Dan Green, Alan Weiss, a bunch of the young guys that were around at the time. So they knew who I was, but comic book readers didn't especially. And the editors didn't really. And the strip, it did very well professionally. It won some awards. It was noticed by the professional community. That's too long ago for me to have any idea. I mean, I've met plenty of fans of the strip since then. But, you only got snail mail and not that much of it. I wouldn't have seen much of it back then. So you didn't really have any idea how well or how poorly the strip was being received, mostly. And but it ran for a year. And by the time it was done, all the editors knew who I was. And I was being offered work in a variety of places. So my career really pivoted on that strip. And it was while I was doing that strip, since Archie was the writer, I was living out in Brooklyn. Archie, I would give pages to Archie. We were doing it by the 3rd or 4th episode. We were doing it Marvel style, which means in the early episodes, Archie wrote a full script. Somewhere in the middle, we changed over to the Marvel style where he would give me a layouts or he would give me the script. I would do the layouts and pencils. I'd give them to him. He would write the script from the layouts or from the pencils. And then they'd be lettered and come back to me to do finishes on. And so he was taking pages home. And we were talking on the phone all the time. And so one night I called Archie to ask about something. And I got this fabulous young voice on the phone. And she can tell the rest of that story.
Okay, I had seen the pages that Archie brought home at some point, and I thought that whoever the artist was, he had done these really great hands. Like, hands are hard to draw, okay. And the artist had done these great hands. And I guess I asked who he was, and they told me it was a guy named Walter Simonson. I said, "Wow, okay." And then so Ann and I would trade babysitting back and forth. Ann and Archie, I think, had gone out, maybe it was their anniversary, and they'd gone out for dinner. And I was over at their house, watching their kids. And this phone rings. And so I blah, 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 I answer the phone. Who is this? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, for Archie. And I said, "Oh my gosh, you're the guy who draws the great hands." that was funny. That's Walter and I remember. That's how we met.
Wow.
I don't remember specifically meeting you in person. I just remember you talking to you on the phone and, seeing you.
I can remember where I was standing in my apartment when we were talking on the phone.
And I remember where I was standing in Anna Archie's apartment.
Aw, seriously, That's why,
So,
seriously, man, you guys are so adorable with
so
this
it all
stuff. I
worked
love
out. I
this.
mean,
This
Wheezy
is
wasn't
great.
working in comics at the time. She was working in publishing for
Oh, okay.
McCad and Bartell, but she wasn't in
Right.
comic books. I didn't really meet her because of comics. And then we knew each other probably for about a year before we began dating. And I've kind of lost track. I used to know all this stuff. Now I don't remember for sure. I think we started dating right just after she began working at Warren.
That part
She
is
went to
right.
work for Warren in, I don't know,
Okay.
June or July
Yeah.
of 74.
Was it right after Nixon resigned or
Well,
something?
we began dating. We began dating on the day before or the day after he resigned. I now have forgotten. Like in August 9th or whatever that day was,
Wow.
somewhere on that day before or day after was when our first date. So, but she was working at Warren by then, and had been for I think a couple of months. But again, her working in comics had nothing to do with me. It was really that she knew
Sure.
other people in comics, and that's where the job offer came from. So it was kind of coincidental in a lot of ways that we ended up together and in the same business. It's been very useful because we get to work together, but it also means we both understand kind of what being a freelancer means and how, 7 days a week, you don't have any weekends. If the work is there, you just have to get it done.
Absolutely.
So you don't look forward to Saturday and Sunday and say, great, I'm going to kick back on Saturday and Sunday and just relax. It's like, oh my God, this job is due Monday morning. I'm going to be working all weekend, honey. And that's, it's very useful and very helpful to be able to share that experience where you both understand what the deal is being a freelancer.
Absolutely.
And it also, one of the things that it does is it's generally given us, parallel but separate careers. I mean, we intersect every once in a while, but we don't work together all the time, which in a way is good because if one of us gets, kicked off a book or something, it doesn't really affect the income of the other person, so that, it gives you a lot more flexibility to have two incomes, I guess, coming in, but not dependent on each other.
Well, it was very helpful in the 70s after we started dating. We dated in 74, and then we're, kids, young children should leave the room right now. We began living together in 1976. And Louise was working at Warren. So back then, health insurance wasn't so astoundingly expensive as it is now. But it was still not cheap if you're on a freelancer income. And what happened was, I think Weezy must have had insurance through Warren. So I did it. I think I did as well because of that. I don't remember exactly. But what did happen is I was under contract to Marvel for a number of years, and I was under contract to DC for a number of years. Weezy worked at DC on Superman for about 9 years.
Yep.
And during that time, we were back and forth, but we had health insurance the whole time. Because either at the time, Marvel, what they offered you in a contract, it was like an exclusive contract. You got paid whatever your rate was. Some of it was before royalties. But they also, if you did X number of dollars worth of work 1 year, the following year, they would pay your health insurance. And then eventually health insurance became more expensive. Then they would pay half your health insurance. And these days, I suspect it's different than that too. But I don't know what contract guys get these days. So, but it meant that for most of our career, up until about, let me see, June, July, August, September, 4 months before we hit Social Security age, we were covered by insurance. My contract ran out at DC with 4 months to go before I turned 65.
Wow.
Yeah, it was either you were under insurance or me under insurance. It seemed to be.
It went back and forth. And so we got Cobra, which was the same insurance we had, but for full price, which was pretty expensive. But for 4 months, we could do it. And then at the end of 4 months, our birthdays hit. We were born the same month in the same year.
Oh, wow.
We turned 65. I'm 3 weeks older than Weezy. So I hit 65 first. She hit it next. And after we hit it, we went into the Social Security office locally here in the county. And a very nice young woman, they're all young to us now, but a very nice young woman took these old people in hand and led us through all the computer stuff in like 10 minutes and got us squared away. And so I mean, we're still working, so we're still making money. It's nice to have a little extra coming in every month. And and what not being on company insurance means is that it gives us more flexibility as to what jobs we want to do, as opposed to jobs we might have to do.
Sure.
Having said that, I will say that I don't know that I have ever had to do a job I didn't want to do for the money, just for the money.
That's great.
I think I've been incredibly lucky, really my entire career, doing jobs. I might not have put them as my first choice, but they were fun. They were kind of out of the blue. When I was working for DC in the old days, in the very early days, not under contract, this is really early. I did not have health insurance then, but I was young and it worked out okay by accident.
Sure.
I got offered Howard Chaykin was doing Sword of Sorcery, which was a Fafford and the Grey Mouser characters by Fritz Leiber. And it ran as a comic. Denny O'Neil wrote it. Howard drew the first 2 issues. He and I co-drew this 3rd issue. We each drew about half. Sal Amendola inked it. And in the 4th issue, I've forgotten who drew maybe Howard drew the lead story? I don't remember now. But Denny decided to put a backup story in that issue of Young Fafford, a story of Fafford as a young guy, and offered it to me. And I mean, I didn't have like a bucket list that said, wants to draw young Fafford over here. But I thought, yeah, sure, that sounds like fun, it was Fafford and the Dragon and stuff. So I had things like that come my way that were fun to do. They weren't drudgery or anything like that. They were just enjoyable jobs, and a variety of them for a while before I began kind of settling down onto some regular gigs.
That's awesome, man. And Louise, I would imagine that you're kind of in the same position, because I'm always happy to read. And as you just said, you had that miniseries you just did, but I was, just kind of checking up and seeing stuff. Have they released Wonder Woman 84, or are they waiting for obviously the movie before they release it? Didn't you write a Wonder Woman 84 story?
I did. I wrote a Wonder Woman 84 story. I don't know if it's been released yet or not.
If it's the Wonder Woman book I'm thinking of, I'm not sure it is, but if it is, we got our comps.
We got copies
very recently. So we have copies of it. Sometimes your comps come out a little ahead of the publication date, but that's not always true. And I don't know what DC's policy is right now, so I don't know whether that means the book's actually out at the moment. But it is printed, and we do have copies.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're holding it back because they keep or they're kicking the movie. They're kicking the movie down the road, and maybe they'll want to put it out when the movie comes out.
Nobody tells us that stuff. We're just freelancers. We're at the bottom of the list, except maybe for writers who might be below us. Although these days maybe not.
I'm a writer. I'm a writer.
These days writers are ahead of artists in comics.
Henry says it might have been Jim Starlin that drew that last issue.
Jim drew that. There was a Young Grey Mouser story. Thanks, Jim. There was a Young Grey Mouser story because what happened? I drew the lead story for the 5th issue. I penciled and inked the lead story for the 5th issue, and Jim did a backup story of the Grey Mouser, probably young. I don't know if that's because Fafford was young. I'm assuming it was that. It's the 4th issue. I can't remember for sure, and I'm guessing it's Howard, but I'm not sure of that.
Louise, they want to know the origins of creating Power Pack. Jesse wants to know. And obviously, that's one of the great series that you brought to light. So, yeah.
Well, I created Power Pack because Jim Shooter, who was my editor-in-chief, hired a batch of new editors, and I had my workload cut in half, and I got bored.
Okay.
So Shooter had been after us editors to work as freelancers also. But I can color sort of, but not great. And I certainly can't draw. So the only thing, and theoretically I should be able to do maybe, is write. Except I didn't want to take work away from the people I knew who were writers, who were supporting their families. Their children were eating because they were writing stories. So I thought, well, all right, so now I'm bored and I want to do something, but I don't want to take work away from other people. So I thought, well, maybe if I make something up, then I'm creating something. I'm adding to the pot instead of taking away somebody's, piece of the pie or whatever, to mix my metaphors. So I went to Jim and I said, well, I have this idea for little kids who are superheroes. And Shooter sort of looked at me like I'd lost my mind. And he said, well, write it up. Maybe we can get a miniseries out of it. And I said, okay. So I went back and I wrote a first plot and character descriptions. And, with powers and stuff like that. And a young artist named June Brigman came into my office.
And by the way, I will say, when I was loading this up, I did put the YouTube link up on my page so people can find it from my page. But I also found something that suggested that June is doing an interview even as we are talking. She is somewhere else, probably on Facebook, talking about other stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. We're
going head to head right now.
Anyway, so I really liked what she was doing, but I really didn't have any place for her. All of my books were filled with, people who were really good that I liked working with. So I said, well, I have this idea for little kids who are superheroes, and I don't have an artist. So can you draw kids? And she said, oh, yeah, I used to draw kids that do sketches at Six Flags in Georgia.
Wow.
And sure, I could draw kids. So I said, okay, well, we'll take it home. Take home this, character descriptions and this stuff, and draw me the kids. And if I like what you've drawn, then I'll suggest us as a team. And she said, okay. And she came back with these wonderful little drawings. And I said, well, okay. I said, this is great. And I stapled everything together and I had it into Shooter. And a couple of days later, Shooter came back and he said, this is terrific. It is now a series. You've got, the first issue was a double-sized issue, and you have, I think, a couple of months to get it done. I had never actually written a full comic.
Wow.
June had never drawn a full comic. I think she may have drawn one somewhere. And suddenly we've got this giant comic that we had to get done. And I think it actually turned out really well. June was the perfect creator for this particular book. As far as creating Alex and Julie specifically, I did the powers. The powers are based on E equals MC squared. So there's an energy power, mass power, a speed of light power, and gravity. I just threw in gravity because, gravity's important.
Because gravity.
Yeah, why not?
Alex got the gravity power because he was the oldest child, and I thought of a more grave, adultish, trying to be an adultish demeanor than the others. Julie, I just liked her. I thought that she was very much into books and into fantasy, and I thought a rainbow flying power would be absolutely perfect for her. So that's what she got. She got the light speed power. Jack, as Mass Master, had a power that at first looked like it was not kind of a boring power, like he could be really big like a cloud. And then he eventually found out he could go down really small. And it turned out Jack is actually, as the series is developed, is the one I had somebody pointed out to me recently that Jack is the one with he's the fighter. He's the one who's taken his power and done all this crazy stuff with it that, you'd think it was a nothing power that turned out to be pretty cool. And then Katie, of course, when she was 5 years old, and she's got the power to absorb energy and just disintegrate things and absorb the energy and then fire off these power balls. And hers is the most dangerous power.
The most destructive. And it's in the hands of this little kid. So I guess that just seemed like a fun idea to me. That's great. How it came about. Did that answer everybody's question? I think it did. I'll add one thing. One of the things, the luck of the draw, having June walk into Louise's office at that moment was so fortuitous, partly because drawing children is different from drawing adults. Mm-hmm. Their proportions are different. They look different. And most of the artists in comics, not all of them, but many of the artists, I'll say many, I won't say most, but many of the artists in comics really couldn't draw children. They were drawing kind of tiny adults or kind of misshapen adults that were short or whatever they were. They were very strange, and including some artists who were quite good.
Sure.
And it was remarkable that June walked in on that day, and she'd drawn kids at Six Flags, and she could draw children, and she drew them very well. So the luck of the draw there is, we should have bought a lottery ticket on that day. That's what we should have done.
You know, a lot of what happens is luck. I mean, you know, you can feel like, oh, I'm so brilliant, but really, you know, you just look around and it could have been, you know, a different day, a different time. June could have gotten hired quick at somebody else's office and never come into my office at all.
Yep.
So, no, I was very lucky. And then I honestly was lucky on other artists that I had doing the book too. Bryn Anderson, who did a lot of the, like our fill-in issues. June, it was doing a group book is really hard. And doing a group book when you're not even used to doing comics is hard. So that, you know, she would not be able to keep up with the deadlines. And then we would deliberately put in a fill-in issue, which the fill-in issues always focused on one of my editor was Carl Potts, and he had hobbies. So we would do Carl's hobbies for the fill-in issue. We did baseball, we did fish.
Yeah, Carl's an aquarium guy, so he's a big.
Yeah, he likes.
That's
fish.
Great.
So
That's fantastic.
I'm not sure if Carl eats fish or not. It might be like eating a friend. I'm just not sure.
And then I had John Bogdanov take over after June was done, and his work is wonderful.
Yeah.
So
he can also draw children.
I'm very lucky on the art in that book.
Yeah. No, it's well, you know, and I agree with athletes who say, you know, luck is when opportunity meets preparation, and I understand
Absolutely.
that. Yeah, you know, and it's true. Yeah, you know, again, you're right. June coming in, and the great thing is, truly, was I discovered, I think, Power Pack through Amazing Heroes, the magazine that would, you know, kind of give everyone this was what's in comics right now. And it was just so great. And as you say, it looks so different because of June's art and because she could draw good-looking children and doing it right. And it really was this great kids book that was so unconventional. And yeah, you guys caught the wave at the right time, and I'm thrilled that it's still remembered fondly, and that they still will occasionally go back to it with a one shot or a special miniseries or something.
I'm doing a miniseries right now.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's great. Are you able to tell us who your artist is, or it's okay for you?
June is drawing it.
June's back. That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wow.
I mean, it's kids or cats with June, I think is. she's
that's terrific.
We're doing Captain Ginger.
That's great. You know, talking to Dean about the discussion he's going to hold with you guys, Walt, and it does involve you as well, Louise. I didn't remember that there was a time that you might have taken over Superman. Is that correct?
Sort of.
Did you have a pitch in?
Before John took it over.
John Byrne, yeah.
And Andy Helfer took me out to lunch. Andy was editor at DC, probably the Superman editor right then. I wasn't paying a lot of attention. And we had lunch. And in the course of it, Superman came up. Now, I never thought in my memory of this lunch that Andy offered me the book. I could be wrong, but mostly if you're going to, DC at that time, DC had an approach where they wouldn't come right out and say it. They would kind of weave around it. And you didn't know, and I'm a guy, if you don't clock me over the head with a hammer, so to speak, I'm just not going to get it. You better say, would you want to do Superman? If you screw around and dance around this whole thing, I'm just going to be oblivious. So we did have a discussion, which I said, well, you know, if I'm going to do Superman, if I got offered this much money, I wouldn't do it. And they weren't small figures. If I were offered this much money, I would think about it. And if I offered double my original amount, yeah, I would do it for sure. And in the middle, I'd think about it. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. I don't know. And that's all we talked about. That's all I remember about talking about it. And a few days later, I was in the office, and Pat Bastian, who was Dick Giano's sort of assistant and helper, Pat went by her in the hall and said, "So I hear you turned down Superman." And I said, "Well, not that I know of, but maybe." So that was my brush with Superman. That was kind of how that worked out. And you know, I was never offered it in a way where I understood I was being made an offer, and that may just because I'm such a hammerhead. So I just, you know, you got to be pretty blunt for me to figure out what's going on.
Well, then, Louise, of course, you had that amazing run with everyone when all the Superman books were connected, and I love the fact that you created John Henry Irons, who became Steel,
Mhm.
and you and John Bogdanov, of course,
Yeah.
if I'm saying it properly, I hope I am.
It's been said every way you can imagine.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, it's sometimes it's an eye chart when you try to get somebody's. And I
Yep.
speaking as someone with a weird last name as well, I can appreciate that
There you go.
absolutely. But yeah, man, I'll tell you, I love that run. And I've gotten Jerry Ordway's perspective on the death of Superman and Dan Jurgens' perspective. So, could you tell me your death of Superman story? What do you remember about that session when this decision was made and these great characters were created from this decision?
Yeah. Okay. We had a meeting. Every year we did a Superman meeting, which I know you've heard about in everybody's rendition. And we had gone into the meeting thinking that we were going to do the wedding of Lois and Clark. We had worked out a continuity that over a year in which this would happen, and it was shown to Jeanette, who's the publisher at the time.
Jeanette
And
Kahn,
Jeanette
sure.
said, "Oh, well, you can't do that because we have a TV show coming, and Lois and Clark won't be married on the TV show. So this will be confusing to our readers to have them married in one place and not married in another place. So therefore, never mind." And we said, "Oh my God." So we spent ages, working, well, several days at least, working on this years-long continuity.
Sure.
So we're sitting there in the and kind of looking at each other, dumbfounded after Jeanette leaves, and Jerry, who often said, "Let's kill him," said, what do we do next? Let's just kill him." And this time we said, Jerry, let's kill him. So that was kind of where that came from. It was Jerry's idea that we took seriously at the right time, place at the right time. It was there again, luck, and being repaired, whatever. So then the question came up. Well, okay, we're going to kill him. How's he going to die? So who's going to kill Superman? And we decided that we didn't want any of the people he'd faced a million times before. Luther couldn't do it. Brainiac, whatever. He's like, we needed somebody totally new out of the blue. I had wanted it to be somebody who came in with no backstory at all, who was just this giant monster, this juggernaut, that would just physically overpower Superman. And I'm sure other people had their own thoughts about that too. And so that was decided on. And then it was like, well, what does this guy look like? So then the artists had a contest in which they had 15 minutes, I think, probably about maybe 5, to sit down and do their sketch of what they thought the character would look like. I don't know where the name Doomsday came from.
Okay.
I don't know if he had a name at that point or not, but everybody did their sketches, and it turned out that everybody liked Dan's sketch the best. So Dan Jurgens' design for Doomsday became Doomsday, and then we worked out a story. It was, one of the things that we wanted to do, and this may have been Carlin's idea. These meetings were so freeform.
Sure.
And they had so many people involved. It wasn't just the writers and the pencilers. There were the inkers and the colorists, and even the letterers were
That's
all
great.
And of course, the editors and assistant editors.
Sure.
So everybody was throwing out ideas. Somebody had the idea of doing the actual death as a countdown. Would be, because there were 4 Superman books at the time, and it would be four panels to the page, and then 3, and then 2, and then an all splash page issue in which they capitalized.
Yeah.
I suspect that was Mike Carlin's idea, because it's the sort of thing he thinks of, but I don't know for sure if that's true. So we worked out that part of the story, and that was the death of Superman.
How
And
about
then,
how about creating Steel and because
okay, after
such an I mean of the four, if I may real fast, of the four you had the clone, so you had Superboy,
right,
and you had the Kryptonian, who
right,
we all assumed was Superman. I mean, I was reading it as it was coming out,
good,
and then you had the cyborg, and then
uh-huh.
you had this great new character that was inspired by Superman. So
Mhm.
yeah, tell us about coming up with that.
Okay, well, obviously we weren't going to leave Superman dead because it wasn't our toy. So, he's going to come back. So, we had a meeting and another meeting next year, and the question was, well, what's going to happen? And I
Yeah,
think Carl Kiesel also had the idea. We had been we had been working in lockstep because each issue
yeah,
was a chapter for the longest time.
absolutely, yes.
And while we desperately loved each other, we were also kind of sick of not doing our own thing. We just kind of
Sure.
wanted to do our own thing for a while. So I had suggested, I think Carl also had suggested that we separate the books. And I had said, well, if we each create somebody who tries to be Superman, well, then we have control of our own little corner of the universe for a few issues at least. So, it was like, obviously Man of Steel, for me, for John Henry Irons, the name Steel, I would create a Man of Steel, and Steel, and you've got John Henry Irons, Iron and Steel. It's like, it works, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
John Henry, the John Henry, the Steel driving man. So, I mean, he's one of John's favorite characters. He has been one of John's favorite legends for
Oh
a long
wow.
time.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, what about John Henry? What about we do John Henry as, he's the soul of Superman. I mean, the
Yeah.
other guys were more physically Superman, but we really felt like he was the soul of Superman. And,
You had,
that,
yeah.
and a real character. Maybe he wasn't taken as seriously as some of the others as going to be the, Superman being reborn. But, we really felt like we wanted somebody who would really, be the way, the basic good guy, truth, justice, and the American way.
Yeah.
That
No,
kind
and you had that great scene of Lois when she meets him, and it's like, oh my God, this guy really does. It seems to be the soul of what, like you said, what Superman was. And no,
right.
that's the great thing is, and you'd never think that you could make a legacy Superman character that way. He would have to be a Kryptonian. He would have to have the powers. And no, it was like everyone forgets the man part of Superman. So
Right.
that was the beauty of that book. Absolutely. No,
Well,
what
I'm
a
glad you liked it.
Also, I think John did a fabulous design for Steel. That's one of the best designs he ever did.
Yeah,
I agree.
It was great.
good. And honestly, I can dream up all sorts of great characters, but what the artist draws is going to make a huge impression. That's going to be probably, really, that's really important. Really, really, really important.
Absolutely. How about those times, Walt, when you and Louise would work together on one of the X books and stuff, X Factor and the like, and stuff? How was it? I mean, wow. I mean, honestly, I would think that's a challenge.
Yeah, she was
having work and
It was just awful to work with. It was really terrible. I'm surprised we're still married. We've worked where she was my editor when I was penciling Star Wars.
yeah,
And then we worked as co-writers on a limited series called Meltdown that was in the 1990 or so, I think. That was Havoc and Wolverine. And that was being done as painted continuity by Kent Williams and John J. Muth. And we've worked where she's been the writer and I've been the penciler on X Factor.
yeah.
And also we actually did an even odder thing, or an odder thing. A few years ago, there was a X-Men #1 Gold or something like that. It was an anniversary issue of the X-Men. And Marvel persuaded Stan to script a short story. And so in the end, when the dust settled, he scripted an X Factor story because X Factor, in the beginning anyway, and the stuff we did, was comprised of the original X-Men characters from unlike the giant team it kind of became.
Yep.
And so it was the 5 characters he'd helped to create, but he didn't want to plot the story. He was going to script it. And so in the end, we put together the old X Factor team. So Wheezy wrote it. She plotted it. I penciled it. Bob Wycheck inked it. Stan scripted it. And I don't remember who lettered it, because I don't think John lettered that stuff. John Workman. I don't think he lettered X Factor. I can't remember.
Okay.
And I don't remember who colored it. But we ended up, so there she was the plotter for a story I drew. It's like 5 pages long. It was short. But I have to say, I thought Stan, and she said it in continuity between 2 early issues of the X-Men. I couldn't tell you which issues they were. 7, 8, something like that. And so it fit in there. So they had the old Danger Room scene, and they had Scott pining for Gene and Gene pining for Scott and not daring to say anything because they didn't want to, screw it up. And Stan really caught it. He wrote it like he was writing it back in 1962 or 63 or 64, or whatever it was. And that was great. So by the time we've worked together, it's worked really well every time. Well, I'll give you one quick example, which is in Meltdown, where we both were writing it. We got the plots. We were doing it Marvel style. So we plotted it, and then Ken and Jay would do the paintings, and we get the artwork back and write from that. But during the plotting stage, it was kind of elaborate. And we used the nuclear disaster at Chernobyl as part of the base for that story. And one of us would write, and you would write, and you'd write, and you'd write, and finally, I'm exhausted. And you'd get up, and the other person would sit down at the computer, and they just pick up right where you were and start writing. And it was really, I hate to use the word seamless. It's so overused these days, but I will anyway, because I couldn't go back now and tell you which part of that story was Wheezy and which part of that story was mine. I have no idea. Generally, Wheezy is better at characterization than I am, and I'm better at snappy patter. But that's a bit of a generalization. But it's worked very well. We had a great time working together, and I will tell you, I won't give you the whole story. It's too long and boring. But she wrote some Silver Surfers years ago.
Okay.
And it was a time when Marvel was contracting. And she ran into a whole series of problems editorially, where Marvel kept saying, this is going to be 12 issues, but no, we want to just do it as 6. And maybe we'll do 12 later. No, we just want to do it as 3. No, and so it was because they thought, sales will be dropping. They're trying to figure out where the sales would become negative for profit. And they kept cutting it down and down and down. So it was difficult to write. She had a fabulous idea. And 6 of the issues did get done. But the other 6 never got done. And I don't know now. I think something similar has been done in the Marvel continuity somewhere, so it might not be worth doing. I would have given my eye teeth to have drawn that, the whole story, right? But the second half of the story. I would love to have done that because I thought the idea was so cool. But as I said, now I think that something like it's kind of been done somewhere at Marvel, so it wouldn't have the same effect. But at the time, it was really riveting. It was for a very quiet person who just works up in her office and doesn't say very much. She's very revolutionary in her approach to some stuff, and that was just awesome.
A lot of the work speaks for itself, Louise. Absolutely, man. No, seriously, and a character like Cable, and where Cable is now, and when it was created, and I'll even confess, I was not the biggest X reader, and certainly you had a lot of stories prior to even creating Cable, but I really loved your Superman, and that's really when and Power Pack as well, and it just seemed like Cable came from that really extreme kind of period of the 90s, and you are such a great character writer and stuff, and what was it weird writing that during that time? Was it I don't even know. Again, you'll forgive me as a reader. It seemed incongruent to your kind of writing and characterization. You're still writing, obviously, so maybe again it was just the art that was overpowering me. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Rob Liefeld designed the character.
Yeah.
And he really did some pretty cool over-the-top designs for the characters that he created.
Yes.
And Cable certainly was that. He was like this big guy with, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't find it overwhelming in that same way to write. It was, relatively easy he was easy as a character to do once I had the motivation for the characters. I mean, that's where characters come from for me. It's like I don't envision them necessarily to start off with. I envision them as wants and needs and gots to have, what's driving them, what can't they get, what do they need and why can't they get it? So that I had that. And then, Rob he sent in a series of designs. And I think Cable, the guy he had drawn as Cable, was actually supposed to have been maybe Strife, one of the villains.
Okay.
But Harris and I both liked the look of him for the Cable character, for the new adult who would come in and whip the New Mutants into shape character. So he was chosen for that, and he turned out to be a pretty popular character, which is nice.
Yeah,
that's a good sign for him.
Yeah, no.
We had a strong idea for who the character was from the beginning, before there was a visual for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Rob also wanted to ask for that name. He came up with the name Cable.
He wanted Cable.
And hey, fine. It wasn't like it was made him happy, and what the heck.
Yeah, honestly, for me, it isn't in the characters' names. It's like in their, I guess they're, again, like the soul of Superman. You've got this thing a hook that I hang a character on is more motivation for me than it is like the name or the way they look. But it really does help to have a great look to a character and a good name.
Yeah, absolutely. No, so have you been pleased watching Cable and Deadpool 2 and him come to life in the films?
I saw Deadpool 2, but it was on an airplane.
Ha!
But I don't think I hadn't gotten earphones for some reason. I think I was trying to work. So I would look up every once in a while and I would see him on the screen, but I couldn't tell anybody was saying, but he looked good. He really did.
Oh yeah.
I have to say, I think of all the characters I've seen of mine that have appeared on the big screen, he really looked the best. Archangel looked really good in that Apocalypse movie. Apocalypse, not great, but Archangel looked really good. And the 2 seconds he was on the screen, you didn't see much of him. But the little bit you saw, he looked good.
Well, he looked good.
Looked good.
I mean, the truth is, we haven't seen a lot of the superhero movies. We saw some of the early Marvels. Maybe I shouldn't be saying it. Well, I'm not working for Marvel or DC much these days. What do I care?
Yeah.
And the truth is, having spent almost 50 years living, eating, and breathing superheroes, I'm not at the stage where I had desperately go out and see the next new movie. There are some good ones that we've missed for various reasons, one way or another. I keep hoping to catch up to them on cable. Eventually I will, or I'll sell them anyway. But we really, we haven't seen a lot of them.
Okay.
And, I'm at this point, I'm way outside the demographic that those movies are shooting for.
I understand.
So that back, if I were 25, I'd probably have seen every one, or 30, but I'm not that age anymore. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm impressed with what they've done. I'm delighted they've done so well. But there are so many we have not seen that it would be hard to judge what they've done with them. Really.
Okay. Well, you got to play in, and weren't you both in Thor?
Yes, the very first one.
Yeah.
So, they did. They flew us out to California.
Yeah.
And I have a nanosecond of screen time laughing like a loon next to Jamie Alexander at the banquet. And there was there had been some dialogue between the Warriors 3 that was kind of funny, but in the end it was cut out. It didn't make it the final cut, and so we're all laughing at a joke that I don't think is showing anywhere, isn't in the movie anyplace.
That's cool.
But it was a fascinating experience. I will say they were very nice to us. Kenneth Branagh, who directed it, and all the people on the set, all the folks. We didn't meet Anthony Hopkins because he wasn't. Well, he was there. Ralph Macchio and I were watching because Ralph's in there too. But
wow.
He doesn't have any direct shots. He was my editor.
Yeah.
He's one of the Asgardians as well. And he's over the other side of the table near Louise.
Yeah.
And we were walking back to the office, they had a disused office they turned into our dressing room. I had our names on it, I think, even, which was very sweet.
Yeah.
And I had some disused furniture, too, which was funny.
That's great.
We were in our Asgardian robes, we're elders, going back to the room, and it was an elevator ride. And we got to the elevator, and the door opened, and Anthony Hopkins is standing there in his Odin costume. Doesn't have his eye patch, but everything else. And we looked at him and and bowed and said, "My lord." And he smiled at us and walked down the hall. When we got in the elevator, that was my entire interaction with Anthony Hopkins. Natalie Portman was not there because they were not filming. They filmed the Earth scenes on Arizona, New Mexico, somewhere down that way.
Okay.
And so we didn't see that, didn't meet her, but met most of the rest of them. Tom Hiddleston was fabulous.
Cool.
He was Mr. Personality. I mean, they were all very nice. They were all very nice to us. But Tom began showing Louise and somebody else who was another girl, I think, another woman, Loki's fighting style, and demonstrating how he had worked out this whole thing with creating knives and firing them off. And it's in the movie for like a half second. But he had worked out this whole thing, and he was showing it. And it was very sweet. It was very, a lot of personality in that.
I really liked him.
So it was fun. So we were out there about 3 days. And the thing that amazed me, I probably shouldn't say this because it's going to screw it up for everybody else who comes after us, but it was I've forgotten the name of our principal minder. Oh, forgive me, because he was a really good guy. He's written a few X-Men comics.
Wow.
I can't remember his name.
Not Zeb Wells.
I don't know. I'll tell you what, I'll move my mouth and you can loop it in later.
There you go.
Okay. And but he was very sweet. I mean, he was doing other stuff most of it. Several people kind of looking after us. And I went to him the day we were going to leave. And I said, we saw several scenes being filmed. The scene where they land in Jotunheim, we watched being filmed. We got to see Odin's bed, which was being taken apart. They'd filmed that scene already. I got to lie on Odin's bed. I was lying on the plywood. The mattress was already gone. And we saw they were building Heimdall's spherical room. That was being built at the time. But I went to him and I said, we haven't signed any non-disclosure agreements. There hasn't been any paperwork so far. He said, "Oh, it's fine. You guys are family. Don't tell anybody." And we said, "Oh, okay." And of course, then you're on your honor in a way that you're not when you sign a piece of paper. And so what I did do was, I don't know, a year later, I dropped him a note and I said, we'd gotten a few photographs of ourselves in the costume, the full outfit, because we were at the table. We were sitting there. I had a big metal belt on, and we actually had shoes. They had sewn leather shoes for us. So we got some photographs of Weezy, me, and Ralph in our costume in the dressing room. And so I wrote him and said, can I put these on Facebook? It's been like a year since the movie came out.
Sure.
He said, well, let me get back to you. And about a day later, he said, yeah, sure. So somewhere on my Facebook page, I guess probably in the photograph gallery, I'm not sure, mostly it's drawing galleries, somewhere on there's a picture of the three of us in our Asgardian robes. So it was a lot of fun. And I got to tell you, the food was great. There was the food they had behind the set. The
craft services, yeah.
The banquet, the banquet food was all organic.
Nice.
It was fabulous. So it was. Pardon?
You had these gauntlets on. Remember the huge gauntlets?
I did.
We had these giant forks and knives that we were supposed to be eating with. The gauntlets were so large that on your costume, that you couldn't bend your arm.
I couldn't bend my arm back to my mouth. They were leather, and they ran from my wrist all the way back, and they had a kind of a diamond-shaped cut here. And so I couldn't bend my wrist more than about this, really, without it hurting. And one of the assistant guys came over during the shooting, and said, try and eat something. And I'm going, well, I'll try, but I'm not sure what I can do. But they did have grapes. And also the silver cutlery was this giant cutlery. And of course, I looked like this as an Asgardian, because I had more hair. Asgardians don't wear glasses.
Yes.
So I didn't have any glasses. So I couldn't see anything. Because I'm terribly nearsighted. And so I was really afraid if I tried using one of these knives and forks, I was going to cut myself. And I thought, I don't want to do that. So I ate a couple of the grapes, and that was okay. And between the scene at some point, there was a break at some point, and changing a setup, I guess. And Ray Stevens was there, played Volstagg.
Okay,
We
yeah.
were chatting for a bit. They were all really nice to
They
us.
were really nice.
And the woman who played Odin's wife, Frigga.
Oh yeah, it's
Renee
Russo. Yeah.
Renee Russo came over, and we were talking.
Wow.
I was talking about this, about eating, and Ray laughed and he said, "Yeah," he says, his very first movie, apparently, the first scene involved eating, and he didn't know enough, and so he just ate. Well, they reshot it like 1,000,000 times, and he said by the time that he was ready to explode. He said, so you learn to fake it. You don't really eat. So I ate grapes by chewing my tongue. I'll have a grape. I palmed it in my hand and ate my grapes that way. So I got a tip from one of the masters on what I should be doing.
Oh man,
it was really enjoyable. It was really, it did. I know this is not true all the time, but it did making movies look like it would be fun. Mm-hmm. And the woman who was the vocal coach, a little younger than we are, but not a lot. We talked to her for a bit on the side for a while. She was very friendly, and we just had a nice chat with her. And her assessment of a set in general, was the fish rots from the head down. And Kenneth Branagh set a really good tone for that set. And I think that's, the idea was that it really made it an enjoyable place to be, an enjoyable place to work. And that was a lot of fun. So then one other quick story from that. One of the PAs we talked to, his father was a carpenter. I've forgotten his name now. But his father, but not for the movies. And he came by, I was watching once on the set, and they were filming, and there were all these people standing around. And he started grasping, all these people standing around making money, and nobody's doing anything. And his son, he said, well, here's how that works. How that works is they all have some specific job. And when they're filming, the moment will come when they have to do whatever they have to do. Pull the rope, do this, do that, so that everything will continue on smoothly and the illusion will continue. And if they don't do it, it'll screw it up and they'll have to do all this stuff all over again. So it's not like they're really doing nothing, but they have these things they have to do just at the right moment to get stuff to work. And that was it was neat. It was very educational. It was a lot of fun to be there, and they were very sweet to us.
That's amazing. And talking to Bendis and Quesada about the preparation for Thor, they said Branagh really was one of the directors in particular that really leaned in on the Marvel panel and really wanted to do it right, and give it justice. So that's cool.
He was very cool. He introduced us. We were sitting at the table, and there were the table had all extras on the far side. So when you see the banquet scene, it's the backs of their heads, and then we're sitting on the other side. The Warriors 3 in the middle. Fandor was on my side, so you're facing it. I'm on the left as you're facing it. So he was the end Warriors 3. Then there was a young woman who was very pretty who was an extra. Then there was me. Then there was Jamie Alexander. On the other side, Hogan was in the middle. Volstagg was on the right side. You were next to Volstagg, weren't you, Louise? Or were you next to the executive? I can't remember.
I was next to Volstagg. On one side, and the executive was next to me.
Then there was an executive from Marvel. We met. I don't remember his name. He got to be in it for being an executive, so he was there. And Ralph, I think, was beyond him. I don't know if anybody was beyond Ralph. I was the other side of the table. But we were, before the scene began, before they began filming it, Ken, like I know him, but Ken had us stand up and introduced me and Weezy and Ralph and explained why we were there and what our significance was to the movie.
Yeah.
Which was very sweet and not at all required. So, but later, at some point, he was coming over. I talked to him a little bit. He came over, he was talking to Jamie about something he wanted to do when they were filming. And it was some really good character stuff. Really smart understanding of character and of stuff. And as he stood up to walk off, I said, you should be writing comic books.
Ha!
And he cracked up. He thought that was pretty funny. So I was good. I thought I made Kenneth Branagh laugh. I'm good.
I'm a big fan.
He also made sure that I think all of the principals had copies of the
yes
of the Thor comics. certainly your Thor comics.
Of my run, they were handed out to everybody, apparently.
That's great.
So yeah,
people know what they were doing.
Well, the other thing I did do, I didn't tell anybody at the time. I was under contract with DC, so I didn't mention this. Now they probably can't nail me, but people were so nice to us that I went up to this gentleman whose name I cannot remember, and at the end, or toward the end, I said, we interacted with hairdressers and makeup people and some of the actors, some of them, and some of the PAs, the woman that was doing the writing. What's that, hon?
Costume designers.
Costume designers. Oh, that's right. The woman who did Gladiator, I think, helped get our costumes put together. I mean, I had them ready for us. They'd taken our sizes before we went out there. And so I went to him and I said, was it Greg? Maybe I'm going to say Greg, but I hope I'm not wrong. But I went to him and I said, can I get a list of the names of all the people we've interacted with? He said, sure. This is the advantage of being one of the bosses. You can send your PA out to do your bidding. And I said, what I want to do is when I get home, I'm going to do a small drawing, a small head drawing for all the people we dealt with. So
that's great.
Within an hour, the PA came up. I had a list of all 35 people, and it was all the people we dealt with, including the PAs, everybody. And he gave it to me a printout of it, and he said, I've sent a PDF to your email. And there was some other third one, I don't know what it was. You maybe just emailed the list in somewhere. So I had 3 different lists in different places I could find. And so when I came home, I did little head sketches, maybe so big, maybe 6 by 9.
Okay.
And I didn't try and draw the characters. I didn't draw Chris as Thor or Tom as Loki. And I didn't do one for Anthony Hopkins. I really never met him, so Anthony didn't get one of these. But I sent a drawing out of all Thor characters, of the people that we dealt with, so Volstagg, Ray Stevens got a picture of Volstagg. The Japanese actor, I think it was Japanese, who played Hogan, got his character, but not likenesses. And then for people that were, the hairdresser and the costume designer and stuff like that, I sent out, and Kenneth Branagh, I chose characters that Asgardians I thought were fun and drew them. And then I printed a little short thank you on the back to each of them. And then when I talked to Craig Kyle.
Oh, sure.
Is Craig Kyle a name you recognize?
Oh, yeah, Carolyn Yost.
I have a much slower retrieval system for things than I used to.
Oh, so he was your minder? Or
yeah, he was our sort of the supervisor of our minders.
That's terrific. That's great, man. No, I love Craig. And
I got that right. Anyway, because I explained what I wanted to do. And I said I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how can I get these to all the actors and everybody. And he said, tell you what, I'll give you my address. They were leaving about the time we left, right after we were gone. They were leaving to go to the Southwest to film the Earth stuff.
Yeah.
And so he was going to be gone for 3 months or whatever it was going to take. He said, send this to my home. I'll tell my wife to expect it. She'll put it aside. And when I get home, I'll see to it. Everybody gets their drawing. I said, great. So I mailed it out, and presumably 3 months later, they all got their drawings. And I will set of 35 drawings. I got 4 thank yous. I did not do it to get thank yous. If you're watching this and you were part of the crew, I'm not, the guys we dealt with, I am not castigating you. We were thrilled to be there. But the 4 people I got it, there was one or two of the PAs, and there was a writer on set, young guy, who was typing. It would need. It's like I am now. I'm sitting with my computer on my laptop. He was sitting on a stool with the computer on the laptop, and they'd run over and say, "Well, you need a line for this," and he would type, and then, okay, fine. They would go take that, and don't remember his name. Very sweet. He apparently had used to write The Simpsons, and he died a couple of years after we were out there.
Wow.
Young. I think he had cancer.
Was it Sam Solomon? He was a Simpsons
maybe
writer
I don't know. I don't know for sure.
Okay.
But he was kind of the last writer on the set because he was on the set, typing up lines as they needed them.
Okay.
And I remember him especially because he did die not long after we were there. And the 4th guy I got an email from thanking me was Kenneth Branagh. So clearly, he was brought up well by his parents.
Clearly, that's awesome. That's fantastic, man. That's beautiful.
It was nice. It was as I said, they couldn't have been nicer. And we do think that Wheezy was invited, possibly because they knew I wouldn't go out on my own. I don't like flying, and I will say, being in a movie, I don't, like I said, we haven't seen many of the Marvel movies. Not that big a deal to me anyway. I mean, I'm thrilled to be in it. I'm delighted they invited me.
Yeah, that's
they
awesome.
invited Wheezy, and from Wheezy's point of view, there was no way we were not going.
That's right.
I don't blame you.
So it worked.
So here, this is very nice. Dina Burnett, Walt Wheezy, you two are so delightful. Thanks for keeping us entertained with your chronicles of cable woes. Here's hoping you manage to get reliable service.
Oh.
Stay safe.
Well, it's been pretty good for a while now, I will say. I grouse on Facebook about stuff I feel needs grousing about occasionally. Partly because I hope it gets back to the companies I'm grousing about, so they'll know that not everyone is pleased with what. But I will say that of late, the cable's been just fine.
That's good, Walter. I got to thank you for telling me how much you were enjoying Ace Atkins' Spencer novels, because I'm a Parker fan as well, and I wouldn't have done it. And I had said, I don't know if I can read the new stuff, and you're like, it's really good, and I trust your taste. So I thought that was pretty cool. And Louise, someone was asking what you listen to or read in terms of that helps you write, and I would imagine more it's listening. Here, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to scroll back and find the question.
No worries.
But essentially, they want to know what influences your writing in whatever ways.
Oh gosh. Who knows?
Okay.
Every once in a while, I'll read a book on how to write stuff, and most of they say the same things that other books have said. So I guess that's not. I think every writer has their own way of coming at a story, and my way is character. I usually get at stories through characters. Although, interestingly enough, I'm doing an X Factor two-parter.
Great.
That fits into the continuity of the old X Factor. And that one actually came to me through, I guess it was the Chris Claremont method, which is Chris would get an image in his head. And that's where his stories came from. It was like some strong visual image. And this one came to me with a strong visual image before I got character involvement at all. But once I had the image, then of course the character involvement followed, and the image was actually based on the character involvement. And I probably can't say any more than that. I don't know what Marvel allows.
I will say, I just would add that Wheezy is a voluminous reader.
Oh yeah, I read stuff all the time.
She reads a ton of. A lot of it she listens to. She does a lot of stuff out of books on tape or books on numbers or digital or whatever they're called these days.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that kind of stuff.
Sure.
She reads way more than I do these days. I still read, but I don't read as much as I need to or I should. Some of the reading I'll do will be related to whatever I'm writing. When I was writing Thor, I did a lot of reading of kind of related northern tales, Norwegian folk tales. I can't pronounce their names. Mo and Aberd, something like that. Some Norwegian guy will give me a hard time for that. I'm sorry, but they're folk tales. Stuff out of the Kalevala. There was a woman named Catherine Briggs. I don't know if she's still alive, but she had several books on Celtic fairy tales and fairy tales out of England and Scotland. I read some of that. Malekith the Accursed. That name actually came. There's a story in which involves a little girl called Malakin. I've forgotten the story now, but I came across the name in one of her books, and I liked it. I liked Mal because Mal means ill or bad.
Yeah, bad.
And so I thought that was a good start for a name. And I didn't want to use her name, so I just made it Kith. I don't know if I was thinking about Kith and Kin. I'm not sure, but that was where the name came from that reading. So mine tends to be kind of more focused in that way. But Wheezy is just she reads a lot of stuff.
I think I tend to read more for fun, and I don't know if it actually I'm sure everything I read influences what I do, I just don't know how. I'm not as analytical about that stuff as a lot of people are.
Do
I
you
just
listen?
and it comes out in any old way.
Are you able to listen to music while you write, like, and even just instrumental, or no, just really just kind of stark? Pardon me, just kind of stark in front of the keyboard.
Don't like having any kind of distracting sound at all going on. If Walter listens to music a lot.
I listen to a lot of music, and I will. If I'm writing, I'll listen to classical music or something that doesn't have words in it.
Certainly, agreed.
Some new agey stuff. If I'm drawing, there's a baseball game being played. I have the baseball game on beyond my desk, but you can always go back and look at the replay if you missed it in your drawing. Or I'll have music, a variety. Yeah, mostly all the stuff old guys like me like. That's what I've got. I have my old rock and roll collection, bunch of classical music. I'm not so much a jazz guy, a little bit here and there, but not as much. I'll play a lot of music over the course of the day.
That's funny. I do listen to jazz instrumental when I write. That's my thing.
I like John Coltrane.
Sure.
When I knew a guy in college who was a gigantic Coltrane fan, more than I will ever be. But he used to play Afro Blue on the college radio station at like 3 a.m, and I would hang out with Mark sometimes at the radio station. So I got to hear that. So I hear it now, and I think of those days. But
Yeah.
I'm an old Poco fan, an old Tom Rush fan.
Poco, fantastic,
an old CLI fan, and a bunch of others.
That's awesome, man. That's fantastic. People wanted to know, and forgive us because we don't want to get into your financial business, but when Marvel, or I should say, when Marvel Television or film or the CW certainly has been like exploring a lot of DC heroes and villains, have they used, Louise? Have they used any of your characters on any of the television shows?
I know they did in some of the animated stuff. I don't know about the live action. Like, I just don't pay attention to it.
Okay.
So I will say, in fairness, Marvel actually did well by me for the Thor movie.
That's great to hear.
So
I'm going to disappear for a second. I'll be right back.
Oh, by all means, Louise, and I'm so sorry. I don't mean to keep you guys so long. So I appreciate it.
No, just keep talking. Walter loves to talk.
All right, all right, no problem. Here we go. We'll just we'll let Louise have her moment of privacy.
I did well by Wheezy and Power Pack, and then other stuff. It's hard to tell because the Marvel checks, more than DC checks, come in with a series of oddball numbers next to the money. And I have no idea what those. So you're just thinking, oh, the God, they're getting paid what I'm supposed to be getting. There's just no way to tell. The DC stuff, at least, it'll say all these different comics that you're getting paid for. And if it's digital, then you're getting a couple of cents. Digital rates are a lot lower than rates in regular comics. And as Weezy noted a couple of days ago, one thing about that's interesting is for the digital stuff, at this point, DC or Marvel has to make no investment to put that stuff up online and sell it. They don't have to have the art done. They don't have to have it colored. Well, they have to have it maybe recolored to bring the dot screens down to what can be on a computer. But there'll be a lot less overhead on that. So I'm thinking we should probably be paying more for that. But I don't really have any idea how much money they make or how that works out. So, but as far as the movies were concerned, I have no gripes whatsoever.
That's great to hear, man. Because honestly, for like the last 15 years that these movies have been happening, sometimes they get different stories, and the correct artist or writer isn't credited for the creation. Sometimes I think that happened more on the TV side with DC, but I do know that they're making an earnest effort, and that when somebody like a Jerry Conway steps up and says, "Yeah, that was one of mine," and it's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, we're sorry." Jerry Ordway's told me the same thing, and that's good. And even poor Marty Pasco, who we obviously lost this spring. I was glad that they were helping him out and stuff. So.
Also, sometimes, I don't know if they still draw these lines. For example, a few years ago, probably in the Batman animated TV, the Batman animated show, whatever was on at the time, they did a short, a half-an-hour version of Manhunter, the Manhunter that Archie and I did. Ivan Cohen wrote it, did a really nice job with the screenplay or teleplay, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And but they didn't use my costume; they used the Kirby costume. I would imagine animating the sleeves that I gave Manhunter would have been a challenge. And so the Manhunter that they did was much simpler to animate. And I don't know that I got anything out of that. The way it used to work and it may still, if you do a character like Manhunter, DC already owns that name. So if I'm doing a new Manhunter, it still isn't a new name on the character. So you wouldn't get anything out of that.
Okay.
And if they make a movie that includes, let's say it includes Manhunter, let's say they do a Manhunter movie.
Yeah.
If they were paying for Manhunter, probably some other character would be a better example. But if the character's name isn't in the title, they're not obligated to pay you anything. So in theory, if they put Beta Ray Bill in a movie, but his name isn't in the title, I'll be waiting for him on that. But I don't know if that's still the way it works. That was the way it worked some years ago. That was how they parsed it. And I don't know now if that's still true. But I will say on the Thor stuff that I created, including Beta Ray Bill, I use Bill as an example because he's not in the title,
Yeah.
including Beta Ray Bill, I did just fine. So
Good.
I have no complaints about that. But I use Bill as an example, but again, bad example. I was paid, but they did actually parse it like that at a time. Nowadays, I don't know.
Understood. And yeah, I mean, again, you heard different things from both DC and Marvel, or I guess I should say Warner's and Disney. And I know for the Nolan Batman movies, talking to Neil Adams and Jeff Loeb and various people like, Chuck Dixon, even little aspects of, oh yeah, they used my Batcave, so I did get a little bit of money and various things like that.
DC is really good about that.
Yeah.
I have to say they're, I think, a lot more likely to give you royalties on stuff.
Yeah.
And including international appearances.
That's great.
That's right. Marvel, I don't know about now. I don't think they do. Has never paid on overseas royalties.
Wow.
I know for certain that my entire run of Thor has been printed at least 3 times in its entirety in Spain, for which I've gotten.
Damn.
But, look, when I got into comics, I knew the job was dangerous. It's not like I'm suddenly going, oh my gosh, I haven't been paid for this stuff. It's like, the job is dangerous to start with. If you don't want to risk the danger, don't take the job. Do what Will Eisner did. Create your own character, publish your own stuff, get out there and do your own thing. The companies are better about paying you some of that stuff now for having created it, but it wasn't always like that, obviously. And there are still gaps in the payment system as far as I can tell. But again, if you don't like it, don't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, when I started off in comics, me and Howard and Bernie and all the guys that were over about a 4 or 5 year period, 67 to 72 roughly, we pretty much had these discussions at long nights over the, shooting the breeze over a bowl of popcorn,
Sure.
that comics was a dying art. And we all thought comics as an industry was going to be dead in 10 years. At that time, the direct market hadn't yet begun. Comic sales were dropping every month. You could see the sales going down a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. The percentage of the total print run was going down, the sales. But we all loved comics. And we loved them. We said, so the industry dies in 10 years. I'm going to do comics right now while I can do them. And when the industry dies, I'm going to go find a real job. But right now, it's still alive. Even if it's dying, let's do it. And so really, that's pretty much what we all did. That was the understanding a lot of us had about where the business was going and what was going to happen to it. The direct market changed that at the time radically. And I don't have any idea what the post-COVID world of comic books is going to look like. Not a clue.
I like Louise's instincts. Please, I'm sorry, Walter.
But I was going to say, but comics, it lasted a great deal longer than any of us ever would have believed. And really, for all that I might grouse about this or that, I've loved telling stories. I've loved doing drawings. And I really, I'm not fit for much else. So it's actually worked out really well. It worked out very well for us. And we've been phenomenally lucky in a lot of ways. We've been very lucky in our careers. In our timing, we got to come through comics when you could be given a book like Thor and you could be given free reign. That's the only book I ever had. Even later, it wasn't like that in the FF, where you said, okay, do whatever you want. If the book dies, it dies. I mean, it wasn't doing that well at the time. So it was a great opportunity because if the book had died, they'd have said, well, this book wasn't doing very well. So we'll hire Walter for something else. And if it does well, they'll say, boy, that Simonson guy, what a genius. So I'm not sure they said what a genius, but it did do pretty well, and it worked out well for me. But that was at a time when you could, as I've said elsewhere, creativity in comics was kind of from the bottom up. You got editors who guided you or who had input, but in that period, at Marvel especially, in that period, I don't know about DC so much. I wasn't working at the time, so at much of anything. But the creativity was very bottom up. You could take on books, and you could go where you wanted to go with them, and it was really exciting. And within 10, 15 years, mid 90s, somewhere in there, and thereafter, when crossovers came in and began becoming really important as a source of income for comics, the companies began instituting strict editorial control over the books. And you'd be told, okay, this month you're doing a crossover with whatever it happens to be, some giant crossover. And those kind of gotten bigger and bigger, and for my money, more and more unwieldy over time, and really clunky. Yeah. But it's not the same as it was when Louise and I really were able to do what we wanted to do in the books that we were writing and drawing. So we came through at a great time.
Mm-hmm. And then they paid us more because we got royalties.
They did.
I mean,
royalties back then.
We're so lucky.
Yep. We were able to sock some of that away.
That's outstanding.
And whenever we retire, hopefully we'll be in good shape. See me again later and see how that works out.
I understand. No. We honestly thank you for all the years of great storytelling, both of you. And really, I'm embarrassed that the conversation has gone as long as it has. And Walter is used to my well, seriously, because I feel bad, Louise, for you, because honestly, like, this is our first talk, and I try to keep it within.
You actually did great, and you moved things along, and
you're very nice.
You did fine. Were there any, before we're out of here, were there any questions anybody had that we didn't answer that we could give an answer to quick?
Mostly these were like really like lovely, like people saying nice things. I'm scrolling.
That's nice of them.
Oh, I see one. I didn't realize until about 2/3 of the way through, you can actually see the questions.
Yeah.
I didn't have the right button.
Oh, I can't. How can you do that?
Well, over on the right of your screen, at the top, it says private chat and it says comments.
Yeah.
When you click on comments, you'll get the comments scroll up.
No kidding.
Somebody said, fun question. Have you guys been to Hawaii? If yes, what did you guys like about the island?
Yes, Jason wants to know.
We were there in 1999, I think, at a creation con. And we stayed for an extra week. Pretty much, we liked everything.
Yeah,
we liked that there were no bugs. We liked the fact you could. We walked into the hotel. It was a long flight. We flew to LA, had a brief layover, and flew into Hawaii. So we got there at 4 in the afternoon. I don't know what the hell time it was for us body wise. It was some ridiculous hour of the morning or the night. And I still remember walking into the hotel and looking around in the atrium and going, "Oh my God, there are no doors getting into the hotel because there are no bugs, and the temperature goes from here to here." It's like they might have other doors hidden away. I don't know, but it was a whole different universe. But it was very great. It was really, again, the convention was fun, and we drove around. We spent some time on Oahu. We spent some time on the Big Island.
Yeah.
I don't know if we went to a third island or not. I can't remember now. But we drove all around the Big Island. We drove up to what's the volcano?
Kilauea.
What's that? Not Kilauea.
Diamond Head?
No. This is it's Mauna Loa and
Kilauea.
And I think it's in Kilauea, the live volcano.
Oh,
whatever it was. It's the one they have the.
Oh, you mean the one that we went up to the very top of the?
They have an observatory on it, and you can go up. We didn't go to the observatory, but you can go up. We discovered you're high enough, so our bag of potato chips, a little bag of potato chips, and by the time we got to the top, it was like a balloon. It It didn't explode, but the air pressure inside was the sea level air pressure, and it was high enough. There was enough less there that our bag of chips was really large. So, but no more chips in it. But we had a great time. It was just again, fans were great. It was just lovely. Drove around Oahu. Scenery was great. I can see if you're young living there, it's not a very big arena. It might be great to retire to, but if you're working there or if you're a kid and you want to spread your wings, it might be hard to be there and do that.
I think a lot of the kids wanted to go to the mainland just because it's.
And we could see why. We can understand. But for 2 weeks there, man, it was just fantastic. So, and what were the nuts that were in everything?
Macadamia?
Macadamia nuts. There were macadamia nuts everywhere.
I'm a big fan.
We would eat outdoors, and small birds would come over and want some of our food.
Jason, who asked you about Hawaii, he's a great guy, and
I see that.
he has sent me a lot of gift bags of Kona coffee and macadamia nuts.
Aloha,
which is,
Jason.
Indeed, he's a really great fan. And here, not obviously the Gore Vidal. He uses the pseudonym of Gore Vidal. I
was going to say, Gore Vidal likes our talk so much. He's come back from the dead to ask the question.
I think I can say without reservation that your comics, Louise and Walter, enrich the comics medium and added a new maturity to the superhero genre. Agreed.
Well,
absolutely. And Henry wanted to know what it was like, Walt, to be inked by Tony DeZuniga. Did you try and draw? And also, there's a couple questions he's got. Also,
I see that. I see the question. Yeah. The short answer to that is, in a way, I did. At that time, this was not true everywhere, but at that time in comics, there was a kind of a house look to stuff, which was mostly second or third or fourth hand Jack Kirby or John Buscema.
Yes, sir.
And my own feeling was that I didn't want to make a large visual break from the previous run on comics. The previous run before me was Tony inking finishes of John Buscema. And at that time, I was doing more finishes than I was, I'm sorry, not finishes, layouts than I was tight pencils. I wanted to teach myself how to storytell, how to make storytelling decisions, what pictures to show, what the compositions were, what information I was transmitting panel to panel to panel. And I wanted to do that faster than I've been able to do that at that point. So when I took over, I did the first 3 issues of the Rampaging Hulk. The finishes were by Alfredo Alcala. And when I took off that and did Thor, wow. I did it for 12 issues for a year. Len Wein wrote it, and I wanted it to some extent to look not like a big jump from the work that John Buscema had done on it. Now, I do not kid myself that I draw as well as John Buscema, not even remotely. But layouts like that, I looked at a lot of John stuff. I tried to kind of make compositions a little like John. I got away from that toward the end of my run. It didn't need to be quite like that. But especially in the first issue, I was trying to do, first couple of issues, sort of a John Buscema look, just in layout form. So when Tony would ink it, it wouldn't feel like an abrupt change from the preceding issue. I will say my attitudes had changed by the time I did Thor 337. And when I began drawing that, I wasn't trying to look like whoever the heck came in front of me. Bill Sienkiewicz did an issue or two. I don't know who did 336. There were a bunch of different artists and different fill-ins. So I just did my own stuff, went my own way, and if there was a break between the issues, too bad. But your question is actually very perceptive. I did try and do that. And really, because it was finishes, I mean, I've had people come to me and grouse. I had one on the web recently. Oh, this doesn't look like your stuff. Tony really changed your work and blah, blah. And I said, no, he didn't really. I mean, he did finish it. I just did layouts. Layouts essentially are contour drawings of the composition, figures, backgrounds, but there's no blacks, really. There's no rendering. And it varies as the layout artist. John's layouts where it was all there, but it was very loose. I would have been petrified to have tried to finish one of John's layouts, whereas Tony did a great job. And on my stuff, I tried to get the whole composition. I did some stuff like that in the very beginning of my career for Wally Wood, when Woody inked a couple of issues of Hercules Unbound that I drew.
Wow.
And I tried to give him, those were tighter layouts than I would do later, because I wanted to give Woody, it was Woody, I was trying to really give him what he needed. And he did, he was very happy with them, apparently. We talked about it once, and he was very pleased with the layouts. But I ended up, on those Thors, Tony really, he was the guy providing the final look on the work. And my feeling at that time, and it would still be true, on any comic, it's so much teamwork. I mean, if one guy's doing all the finishes, obviously, that's not so true. But if you're doing teamwork on the book, all I'm really concerned about is that the book will look good when you're done. I don't care if it looks like me. I don't care if it looks like Tony. I just want it to look like a professional comic book by the time we're finished.
That's cool.
I thought that's the way it came out. So that was a very long, boring answer to your question. Sorry.
No, and forgive me real fast because I am interested. I've never talked to an artist that worked on the Marvel black and white magazines.
Oh,
And Henry wanted to know if you had to change your style, and I didn't even realize. I read those Rampaging Hulk magazines, and again, especially those black and white
you know,
ones.
I was the first guy in that book.
I didn't
So it
realize
wasn't
that.
like I was coming off some other book. And by that time, there had been a lot of artists in the Hulk. I mean, Bill Everett, for God's sake, and John Romita, Gil Kane. There were
Trippy.
plenty of artists in that book and plenty of different looks.
Okay.
And so, in doing layouts for it, I was just trying to draw. If I drew anything, any inspiration, probably from Jack Kirby's original issues, probably from those first 6 issues that he drew, or he drew 5 of them. Steve Ditko, I think, drew the 6th one. But the very early Hulks
Yes.
and the way those looked is kind of what I was trying to get a hold of for inspiration. But beyond that, no, I didn't try and make my drawing into someone else's stuff. I just tried to do the layouts that Alfredo would be able to take and turn into finished black and white work.
That's cool. Louise, everyone loved your comments on the Chris Claremont documentary, also, and Asceni as well. So were there any stories that you gave them that didn't make it to the final cut?
I haven't watched the documentary, so I
That's
don't
fine.
I
know.
didn't watch enough video.
I suppose they probably used anything that was of any import at all. I usually don't like watching myself on those things. It's like, oh God, no. So
Well,
I don't.
I'll
But
tell
you're
you.
so good in them.
Yeah, well, honestly, and another truly thank you for your contribution to Maria Cabardo's or Carbonaro's Jeff Jones documentary.
Cabardo,
Yeah, I met her first, then I got to see the movie, and man, it is so great to see all the photographs of all of you back, during the studio period.
Sure.
And really, it's and especially, I'm a fly on the wall. I'm not a comic creator, but the Chicago cartoonist community has let me in, and it was so great just seeing those parties and just those great pictures of all of you having fun. And I know it was the same kind of vibe that I've been able to enjoy with my cartoonist friends over the last 15 years. So yeah, it was really it's great. It felt like a rock documentary in a lot of good ways. You know what I mean? Well, it was because you guys are, hey man, for real, and Walter as well. I mean, you truly, you creatives. I mean, we all as comic fans respect the art and know that it's a creative endeavor and that you guys are really putting yourselves into these works, and we all appreciate it, and that's why it was really fun. And I really felt Maria as a filmmaker kind of was able to set it like a good rock documentary.
Yeah, I think she was. That's another one that I haven't watched, but I understand that it was really pretty great. So I think that's nice.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
see one more quick question for Henry, which is about Gene Colan. I
Yeah.
wrote that I'm not heavily influenced by Gene. I loved his Iron Man, one of my 4 favorite old Marvel comics when I was reading Marvel, along with the FF Thor and Spider-Man.
Oh yeah.
And if I were to draw an Iron Man comic, it would be Gene's Iron Man from the old days. That's my favorite costume and my favorite version of that costume by different artists. So most of the costumes since then are, to me, more elaborate iterations of the Rococo version of that, early, simple medieval stuff. And I would, by the time it goes through the Baroque and all the rest of it. And I love that work. And if I'm drawing Iron Man, it's very much Gene's Iron Man in my own style. But figure work and stuff like that, I would love to be able to draw like that, some of that stuff, and use that kind of tonal work that Gene was just a master of. But I'm a linear guy that is beyond my capabilities.
I have an original Gene Colan commission blade on my walls. And mentioning Tony DeZuniga, you can't see it; it's off camera. But a great Jonah Hex that I got from him about 12 years ago. So yeah, I understand, and yeah, these are masters. And it's so funny, Walt, because you mentioned that Chris Cantwell, who just took over Iron Man, and the artist Cafu, they brought Tony back to that original design. And
Oh, did they really?
And it's even in the story that he really wanted to get back to basics and have a non-techie suit. So it really is this mechanical, old-fashioned classic suit.
Well, one of
and
the
I think,
that Gene did with that suit, especially with the face, as simple as that face was, he imbued it with an astounding amount of emotion.
Indeed.
By tilting the eyes up, one little line sort of with the brow that looked when you were in that. And of course, back then, Tony was very tragic because he had a heart condition. He had a magic heart
That's right.
stuff to keep him alive.
Oh yeah.
He was in danger of dying any minute. Those days are long gone. But it was so expressive. And that's one thing about Gene's. Gene's drawing itself was incredibly expressive. And he brought that to Iron Man in a way that, for a guy in an iron suit, fabulous. So it's one of the reasons I really enjoyed it. I have to go look at an issue of Iron Man now.
That's great stuff, man. And real fast, Scott wanted to know if you enjoy inking yourself, Walter.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, I don't have any reservations about that. I will say, whatever I'm doing, I wish I was doing something else. So I'm penciling, I wish I were writing the damn thing. And when I'm inking, I wish I were drawing the damn thing. And when I'm, it's like, somehow I'd like to be doing something else when I'm stuck having to do whatever it is I'm doing. But I do like inking myself. I do like putting the lines down. I do like trying different things. I'll have a cover up in a day or so on my Facebook page. Drew Ford, who runs a small publishing company called It's Alive, has been reprinting a lot of Sam Glanzman's work.
Wow,
and I'm a big fan of Sam Glanzman.
Yeah.
And if you haven't read his USS Stevens stories, I cannot recommend them highly enough. Sam died a few years ago, old guy in his 90s. He was a sailor on a destroyer escort in the Pacific in World War II and did a ton of little 5-page stories about that experience and a couple of graphic novels. And they range from just the horrific and the terrifying to some really funny moments of life aboard the ship. And they've been collected in a couple of big books.
Yes.
So I would, all that stuff, which I'm thrilled that they were done. But Drew is now publishing Kona, Monarch of Monster Isle. And what that is that's a comic from the early 60s that was Sam drew. I don't know who wrote it. And it's a guy, an older guy, and his widowed daughter, and their 2 kids, and a bunch of M1s lost on an island, or on a lost island that contains full of dinosaurs and cavemen. And the cavemen are Neanderthals and Pithecanthropuses. And the Tyrannosaurus Rexes are the allies of the Pithecanthropuses, and the Triceratopses are the allies of the Neanderthals. And our heroes end up hanging out with the Neanderthals and teaching them how to use the guns to change the course of the war. It's guns, it's cavemen, it's dinosaurs, it's a lost island. How can I not love this book? So I'm doing a cover for the 4th issue of the reprint. There were about 23 issues. I don't know if Drew's reprinting all of them or even the whole batch, but in some form. But I'm getting to do this one cover. I put part of it up earlier. This ink has stopped for a while. Now I'm going back on it. I should finish it tomorrow. And I'm putting it up on my Facebook page. So that'll be up fresh at the top sometime tomorrow, I hope.
That sounds cool. And I know you're still working on Ragnarok too, right?
I am, although right now I keep doing these other covers for people. So
okay.
I am writing Ragnarok. I'm writing the 4th story arc at the moment. And I have a pretty good opening for it. And I know where I want to go, but I haven't figured out how to make the ending work yet. So I'm still working on that. I will say, this is not really a secret, Thor goes to Jotunheim. So he goes off to face the Frost Giants. And that's the next story arc.
That's exciting. Fantastic. Louise, tell us again the miniseries that's now collected that you just did recently.
Oh, Hyperbreed.
Hyperbreed.
I'm talking about the Storm King one. Yeah, it's a science fiction. Well, it's more like space opera, really.
Great.
So it looks really good. The color looks good. So the art looks good. Guy Dorian drew it. So, and it'll, apparently it sold really well. This is what I don't know what that means.
Who put it out?
In a modern context.
Yeah. Who put it out? Which publisher?
Oh, it's Storm King, Sandy Carpenter's company.
Okay.
Sandy King Carpenter is John Carpenter's wife.
Yes.
And has her own line of horror comics.
Right.
Produced by Storm King.
She and John do a horror line. It's kind of a horror comic. It's really more space opera. And it's in their kids line, although I'm not sure. It was originally done for the grown-up line, but I guess it didn't have enough sex and violence, and apparently, well, it has a lot of violence. Actually, I'm surprised.
Violence.
Are you sure? Are you sure we can actually do this in a kids comic? And they're saying, oh yeah, so whatever. Anyway, I hope no children are scarred by this.
You're going to be up before Congress in a couple of years, sugar.
Exactly.
I probably get Ethiopian chains.
Corrupting our youth. Shame on you.
Oddly, I was actually surprised that it sold well, considering we're in the middle of COVID, but it did apparently. So that's cool.
That's awesome, and we'll see when Wonder Woman 84 comes out.
Yeah.
And guys, seriously, you're lovely to spend 2 hours with me. This is and the viewers, and truly, I genuinely appreciate it. Again, if you didn't get enough of Walt and Louise, they are coming back and doing Baltimore Comic Con. Walter is going to be part of this great 1985 conversation again with Dean Haspiel, talking to Walter, Dennis Cowan, Bill Sienkiewicz, and Howard Chaykin. That's happening on Friday night. And I believe our talk, and Louise, I know I sent you confirmation of day and date. I know it's either Saturday or Sunday
I
afternoon.
think it was Saturday.
I think you're right.
But
true, and
But
that's
double
gonna be
check
great.
your schedule, everybody.
Yes,
It's
check and go to.
anyway.
I don't give the website out enough. BaltimoreComicConLive.com is specifically for our online event.
Oh, there you go.
So yeah, we're the guys at Mainframe, and I'm part of that group that cultivated all these panels. We're really pleased with the programming that we got,
Good.
and we're thrilled that you're both going to be part of it. So
And two last quick answers. Henry, dirt on Byrne and Claremont? We have none. We have no dirt on Byrne and Claremont. And Sean, yes, I did give dinosaurs feathers when I was doing the Fantastic Four. At least a feathered crest and maybe a few more besides. I have no idea where I got that from, but it's one of the first examples as far as I know in comics. So there we go.
there you go. All right,
All right.
And we're going to stop it there.
Thank you, everybody, for all your questions. Thanks for stopping by.
And if
Thanks
you have more
for your kind
questions, and if you have more questions, again, they're going to be there for you next weekend. Not
We'll
this
be
coming
back.
weekend. And you can ask them then. So truly, guys, thank you very much for your time tonight. Be
It
well.
was our pleasure, John. You take care.
You too, guys.
Be safe, everybody.
There you go. Walter and Louise Simonson. That was what a day, man. I started off with Dave Gibbons for a nice visit, and then wrap things up with the Simonsons. Folks, really appreciate everyone coming out. Great questions. Be well. We'll talk again before the weekend's out on Word Balloon Live. Stay safe. Stay happy.